Never mind Lafroig or Lagavulin or Ardbeg, this right here might be the most Islay whiskey of all Islay whiskeys, and no one seems to be talking about it. Well, we're going to fix that today. I'm Jeff, this is gwhisky, stick around. Alright, so I'm not going to keep you in the dark. The whiskey in my glass is Kilchoman 100% Islay. This is a bottle that I've been coming back to for some time now, and I consider this to be one of the most unique and interesting releases from the brand. Now, typically, Kilchoman releases are heavily peated and they come in at 50 ppm, but not the 100% Islay line. This one is 20 ppm, so it's still a smoky whiskey, but it's going to be substantially lighter. The whole concept here is pretty cool. It's farm to bottle. They source their barley from Rockside Farm, I believe, which previously has supplied barley to places like Bruichladdich. Beyond that, this is also floor malted, which is pretty cool. Very few brands have their own space for floor malting. Kilchoman does. And then this is going to be matured and bottled on Islay, so the name 100% Islay, very fitting. In fact, this might be the only whiskey line that I know of that has 100% of the process taking place on Islay. There are other lines that come close. For example, you have Bruichladdich, what is it called? Islay barley. Comes very close, but the barley there actually gets shipped over to the mainland for malting and then comes back. So, like I said, this really is the most Islay of Islay whiskeys. Most Islay brands are not using barley that was grown locally, so this goes to a matter of, terroir. Beyond that, there's even some instances where whiskeys that are from Islay aren't necessarily matured on Islay. They spend some time on the mainland maturing before they get sent back. That's definitely the minority, but my point is this. There's a lot of stuff that says Islay on the bottle that is not 100% from there, and this one actually is. And listen, I'm not saying that everything all the time should be 100% from Islay, but it is always cool when a brand focuses on doing something entirely locally. It supports the local community and blah, blah, blah. It's just kind of a cool concept and I like it. Anyway, our 100% Islay. This stuff is an annual release, and what I've got here is batch 14. This was made using 2013 and 2014 harvests of publican barley. It's a 9-year-old whiskey, and our casks are mostly ex-bourbon with a tiny proportion of Oloroso sherry in there. I think our ratio here is 9-to-1 bourbon to sherry, so this is going to be a mostly bourbon-driven whiskey, but it does differ slightly from the previous release from 2023, the release number 13. That one was full bourbon maturation, so they do make slight changes year to year. And actually, the 2025 release just dropped, I think, last week or a couple weeks back, and that one is back to being a full bourbon maturation again. This time, it's made using both Concerto and publican barley. So there's loads of these like nerdy little production details that us whiskey folks can mull over, and we love it. We love a good mull. Like, if you give us some nerdy, overly detailed production tidbits, we are over the moon. We are as happy as a clown in a place that makes clowns really happy. Possibly a very small car. I don't know what they like. Anyway, that's the intro done. Now let's do the review. In the meantime, if you'll kindly leave a like, that would help a lot with the algorithm, and I would appreciate it. As always with Kilchoman, good specs here, 50%, non-chill filtered, natural color. Alright, for presentation, I actually like this Kilchoman bottle more than I like most bottles. I like the color scheme on the label. I think the beige color scheme kind of represents the flavors we get from the whiskey really well, if that makes sense. So this one gets a 4 out of 5. It says non-chill filtered, natural color. It says it's a single farm whiskey. It gives us tasting notes on the back. If you look at the box itself, it'll give us the age statement as well as a few additional details. So great information and good looking bottle. All right, so the first thing I noticed on the nose of this whiskey is lots of barley. A field of barley swaying peacefully in the late summer sun. How is it swaying peacefully in the late summer sun? Poetically. There's also a very earthy, farmy peat in here. Think barley, earth, hay, cowshed, farmy notes. There's ginger in here. There's also honey, cereal, salt, minerals, and candied orange. We also get vanilla in here and touches of pineapple. The smoke in this is substantially more toned down than what you would expect from a typical Kilchoman. On the palate and finish, this is nice and oily and mouth coating. It gets a lot more substantial here than it did on the nose with these salty, earthy, meaty notes. This also gives us gentle, ashy smoke, smoked vanilla, ginger beer, and we get a nice fruitiness here with grilled pineapple and fresh orange juice. Behind that, there's more barley, farmy cowshed notes. There's Weetabix in here because why not? And our finish is medium long on ginger ale, vanilla, and candied fruits. All right, so this is awesome. I think it's an excellent whiskey. In fact, I would say that I like this more than I like most of their heavily peated offerings. I think the house style actually lends itself very nicely to a softer, gentler style of peat. And listen, I'm not saying stop doing the heavily peated stuff. I love that too. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep putting out both. And to the brand's credit, recently, I would say over the last year or so, I've seen a few other 100% Islay releases that are not from this line. So there's more stuff rolling out in this style, which I think is great. Like I said, this one is slightly different from the 2023 release in that this one does have a touch of sherry in it, and that sherry does make an appearance, but honestly, it's still very much a bourbon-driven whiskey like it was the year before. If I had to compare the two, I might say that the 2023 slightly edges out this one, but it's very close. The difference is marginal. And I'll say this, regardless of what year, what batch of this, what release of this you're buying, it is going to be mostly bourbon driven, at least the recent ones are, and is going to let the distillate shine. In fact, more than this is cask driven, bourbon driven, this is distillate driven, and it is a beautiful distillate. I don't know if it's like the locally grown publican barley, if it's the nice 9-year age statement, if it's the good cask choices, but there is a magic to this whiskey. This is one of those craft whiskeys that really feels like a craft whiskey. Think Campbelltown. I'm not saying it's the same profile as a Campbelltown whiskey, although you could make an argument for that, but it's just one of those craft whiskeys where you just know, okay, I'm drinking something of quality. Care went into this. In fact, you know what? Let's build on that. To me, this feels somewhere in between a heavily peated Kilchoman, a Kilkerran, and little hints of, let's say, Ardnamurchan in there. This gives us the Kilchoman house style. It's craft. We get gentle peat in here. There are coastal and fruity elements to this. It's got a very robust profile. We have those farmy elements. All of these things converge here in a very balanced way. And listen, all of that is just to paint a picture. It's actually a very unique whiskey. It stands on its own, and I have to applaud Kilchoman here because I think they've done something pretty special with this line. Also, they're not paying me. I just love this stuff. Everyone thinks I'm a shill. No one pays me. Yet. My integrity is actually for sale. I'm just waiting for someone to make an offer. Anyway, this stuff is unique for Kilchoman. It is unique for Islay. I love that they're doing like the terroir, support your local community approach. I think that's awesome. And I love to see them leaning into this line and this style of whiskey more and more. I think they should keep it up. So for score, this one gets an 89, which is the same score I gave the 13th release. I did like that one slightly more, but not enough that I want to bring this down a point. So 89. This is one of the best and most interesting releases from Islay on the market today, in my opinion. However, value is an important factor here. Before we touch on that though, I do want to say a quick thank you if you're a channel member, if you're a patron. Guys, thank you very much for the support. I appreciate it. And if you want to help out, this whole channel is me scripting, obviously shooting, editing. It's a one-man show. Any kind of contribution is greatly appreciated. Now let's jump into value. So value for this one is a little bit tough. I remember the first few releases of this were like around $100, which felt more reasonable. Nowadays, oftentimes you'll see it for 120 or maybe as high as 130 US dollars, which I do think is high. Now keep in mind, this is a fine premium tasting whiskey, but I would love to see it stay around the $100 mark. I'm sure doing everything locally and making it fully craft does add to the cost, but I really do think that the $100 that's a nice price point for it, and I do think it's worth it. Any higher, I'll leave it up to you, but all I can say is that flavor-wise, quality-wise, this whiskey is highly recommended, so make with that what you will. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will bring us to the end of today's review. Thank you very much for watching, and this is the part where I ask you what you think of this whiskey. Have you tried this whiskey? Which release, which edition did you try? This one's the 14. How does it differ from some of the previous ones? Have you tried the new 2025 release? Any kind of question you can think of. Do you like chocolate? What's your favorite dinosaur? Put all of that down below, and I guess I will see you in next week's video. Also leave your suggestions of stuff you want to see reviewed. I feel like I'm rambling at this point. See you next time, fellas and ladies.